morning。
Good morning。
欢迎吴秘书长、邱主委，还有各位贵宾、各位女士、各位先生，大家早安。今天是上班日礼拜一加上我们外面的这个天候看起来是艳阳高照，有这么多听众还选择来参加这一场的学术研讨会，让这一次的会议看起来变成一场的盛会。我在此仅向各位表达衷心的欢迎。今天的会议主题是习近平主政下中国大陆的政治、经济与社会发展态势。这应该是当下许多国际人士，尤其我们住在中华民国台湾的国民共同关注的重要议题。我们要讨论的不只限于掌控统治机器的党政军的权力精英，我们对和人民日常生活息息相关的经济和社会议题也同样的重视。我代表主办单位向今天的会议的各场次的主持人、引言人、与谈人，还有专题演讲的贵宾，最后参加圆桌论坛的所有专家学者，都表示非常的谢意。同时要感谢邱主委以及陆委会为这一次的会议提供了经费的支持。过去2个月来，国策研究院的同仁上上下下都非常辛苦的筹备这一次的会议。我在这里也同样的向我们的同仁表示非常的感谢。正如刚才我所说的，这一次的研讨会的主题是习近平主政下的中国大陆政治、经济和社会发展的态势。回顾90年代初期，邓小平决定采取改革开放以来，历经3届的中共总书记，习近平在2012年11月中共18届一中全会当选或者正式接任总书记，并且在2017年、2022年获得了连任。习近平接任中共最高领导人以来，逐步的调整之前的改革开放路线和国内外的基本政策， 修订了若干重要的决策机制，并且在意识形态的路线方向向左转。过去将近12年，中国大陆的政局、经济以及社会广大的层面发生了相当显著的变化。本次的研讨会希望针对这些变化的态势进行分析、解读，甚至思考，在当前的情势下，未来可能发展的走向。希望经由今天所有专家学者的分析跟说明，能够让在座的各位对当前中国大陆内部的状况有进一步的了解。今天下午在最后一场，我们会有1个半小时的圆桌论坛。在那个时候，希望我们会有一些时间，能够让在座的贵宾提出问题或者加以评论。最后，我谨祝这一次的研讨会顺利成功。谢谢大家的参与，谢谢。
Now we are honored to have Secretary General Wu Zhaoxie from the National Security Council to attend today's conference. Now let's welcome Secretary General Wu to give an opening remark.
You probably noticed the media out there, and normally I'm not that popular, and it is the PRC that makes me popular here. But indeed there was an exercise announced this morning, and we all had to cope with the situation, so I'm sorry I came a little late, and I guess you know the reason why. Minister of Mainland Affairs Council, Dr. Chu Zhen, President of the Institute for National Policy Research, Dr. Thian Mao, former AIT Director, my dear friend Ambassador Yang, Distinguished Fellow for China at the USIP, Dr. Andrew Scobell, experts and researchers from home and around the world, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by thanking the INPR under the very able leadership of Dr. Thian Mao for organizing today's conference. I would also like to thank the Mainland Affairs Council for making the event possible by sponsoring it. I'm particularly grateful for many distinguished fellows for participating in today's conference. I'm sure your insightful analysis and keen observations will contribute significantly to our understanding of the PRC, which has become more complex than ever. Of course, the global geopolitics has also become more complex, turbulent, and precarious, that require some hard thinking among ourselves on how to position our best strategies forward. We are often asked these questions. At least I'm very often asked these questions. What are the Chinese leadership up to in rapidly building up its military? Why would the PRC continue to harass its neighbors, knowing that these may cause reactions? Would the sluggish Chinese economy able to support its global ambition? Why would the Chinese decision makers signal to others that they need to focus their energy on salvaging the economy, but at the same time, wolf warrior military and diplomatic activities would not stop or even slow down? What are the regular people in China affected by the economy thinking now? What is behind the 100 plus generals behind bars? And how would that affect the PLA capabilities? I never have any satisfactory answers to this grand strategy, to these grand questions. Because the secret nature of the Chinese decision making. And very often, I commented that I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't work in Zhongnanhai, and therefore I have no answer. But we need to continue to discuss with each other because these questions are very important. And I'm sure through frank exchanges in the conference today, we may be able to come to a better understanding and consequently contribute to better policies and approaches in dealing with the PRC. But before we are able to understand the true feature of China in all aspects, there are geostrategic trends that we can measure. The world we are in today is quite visible, with wars and tensions everywhere. Russia's unjust invasion does not seem likely to end anytime soon. And the atrocities, destructions, and human sufferings in Ukraine are truly heartbreaking. And in the Middle East, Hamas strike on Israel October 7th last year with killing and kidnapping of the innocent caused chain reactions that also led to heartbreaking sufferings. It doesn't seem to be coming to an end anytime soon either. And the situation in the Indo-Pacific is particularly alarming with the gathering storm of the PRC expansionism, with Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines struggle to cope with the harassment, gray zone activities, and hybrid warfare. And of course, Taiwan is the focal point of the PRC expansionism in the Indo-Pacific. As the one working in the National Security Council, I can tell you that the pressure on us is not light. And we take it seriously. The threat to us includes military, gray zone, and economic coercions, hybrid warfare, legal warfare, and psychological warfare. We need to stay alert at all times because we cannot afford to have our value of freedom and democracy, rule of law and human rights, and etc. Also our democratic way of life undermined or eroded. Nevertheless, we understand our responsibility. We need to stay strong and resilient to keep authoritarianism in check. We also need to stay calm and confident to prevail in the struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. We will stay moderate and responsible and work hard to maintain the cross-strait status quo to help maintain peace and stability in the region. We also want to seriously invest in our defense to serve as a deterrent against aggression. For your information, between 2016 and 2024, we have increased our defense budget for about 80%. This is a genuine show of determination for our self-defense. We will continue to make investment in our defense and conduct military reforms so that we are capable of fighting asymmetric warfare. And at the same time, the National Security Council is engaging in full force in building whole of society resilience. This national grand project is also to serve as a deterrence. We are also reaching out to like-minded partners to share experiences combating authoritarianism and its influence operation. As a result, leaders around the world talk more than ever about the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, which is indispensable to global security and prosperity. And some of them also oppose unilateral change to the cross-strait status quo by force or by coercion. Some American friends say that Taiwan is a force for good in the world. I know Steve said that. And we all like that description. We know this is very telling about the responsibility we need to shoulder to help make the world a better place. We will not let go of this responsibility. We know fully well that Taiwan is targeted by the PRC, and it is not the only target. We are concerned that if we don't stay vigilant, others in the region may suffer. I must go beyond the Indo-Pacific in discussing authoritarian expansionism. The PRC and Russia are collaborating closely with each other in many areas. We have seen the pair repeated joint military exercises in the West Pacific. There was even a joint Coast Guard patrol in the Arctic recently. With authoritarian expansionism in high gear, democracies around the world must stand together to prevent authoritarianism from further expansion, and we are stronger together. And on this note, I can assure you that Taiwan will continue to work closely with our democratic partners to safeguard regional status quo and peace, stability, and prosperity. And we will continue to seek possibilities for healthy and orderly exchanges and dialogues with the PRC under the principle of parity and dignity, of course. The world we are in is not an easy place. And the PRC under Xi Jinping is now making the people in the Indo-Pacific more comfortable. There are many issues to be explored and contradictions to be disentangled. And this conference provides us with a great opportunity to sort out this complexity. I would like to thank you all again for the endeavor and look forward to reading the reports by the Manifest Council on your main findings, and wish you a very successful conference. And thank you.
Thanks, Secretary General Wu for an inspiring speech. It's now social time. Please all the invited speakers, moderators, presenters, and discussants come front and take a photo together. First, let's please the panelists sitting in the first row come to the stage. 请坐在第一排的语坛人、引言人、主持人、老师们到前面合照。Now please the panelists sitting in the second row come to the stage. 请坐在第二排的引言人、语坛人、主持人、老师们到前面，找到自己的名字。Last, please the panelists sitting in the third row come to the stage. Please look at the camera in the center. The person raising hand. 请看举手的那台摄影机。 朋友可以吗？ Thank you to all the panelists. Secretary General Wu has another schedule to leave first. Thank you again for your attendance.
I went swimming.
The following events will begin soon. Please come back and be seated at 10:20.
这个是跟中加民一起筹办的，那主要是做是公务员，所以现在台北到这个要多一点地方，对，欢迎来到来到上海，各自参加这个。
那我请那个媒体。我现在可以在嘉义市。啊？嘉义市政府。
好，嘉义市政府。
对啊，之前那个在台南的时候，被赖长叫过去嘉义帮忙，他说是独行者，就后来没连任。因为我现在在高雄，所以我在想说就先在那边等。就后来换陈其迈，觉得我好像跟他是不同系统，所以我甲迄个阿巴过来，他立宪。
所以你今天是特别跑来。
我跟郭老师互动比赛，高一人，伊讲其他的这场最大的，
台湾党的。
对啊，我这场是台南放3档啊，另外寿命叫做台南处理地档的啊。啊，怪处理完嘛无啥物评，尾仔拖的一直要叫我过，我都想改样无写。啊，尾仔伊透过赖上，迄阵咧做行政院长，啊，硬甲我约袂到3天。对。
所以现在嘉义县。
嘉义市。
嘉义市。
啊，因为离秘书县嘛，在秘书室，所以我即摆拢在办做伙。伊甲纪委啊，主要去公山嘛。
那你还在嘉义哦？
对啊。所以明年过，我本来是讲吼嘛，会当转去高雄，我较准。我即摆伫嘉义，我根本就离袂当。我就等明年2月份一结束康回田的专训会。 照，啊无真正冲来表演。哦，谢谢。
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will begin soon. Please come back and be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will begin soon. Please be seated. Welcome back to the conference. In the next session, we're honored to have Ambassador Stephen Young, former director of AIT, to give a speech on the topic of Cross Strait Relations with the increasingly assertive China. Please, Ambassador Yang.
I'll hold it so you can listen to me. Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Young, former director of AIT, and I am very delighted to be back in my second home, Taiwan. I live in New Hampshire, which is north of Boston, so it's a long ways to get over here, but I love to come back to Taiwan. I've lived here 5 times and I have many, many friends, some of them right here. But it's, the jet lag is kind of creeping up on me, you know? So I'm glad I'm speaking in the morning because I might fall asleep this afternoon. I have some short remarks. China lacks friendly and mutual relations with many of its contiguous neighbors, in no part because of its arrogance, foreign policy, and its penchant for proclaiming bogus territorial claims along its external borders. I think it's safe to say that this leaves Beijing without many friends in the region. Sure, they trade when it suits their mutual purposes, but much of Asia remains skeptical of Chinese policies when so many of them are premised upon one-side deals, whether economic or military. In recent months, Beijing has accelerated its threats against Taiwan, the Philippines, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, and South Korea. This appears to be strongman Xi Jinping's strategy to cement the country's objective and to be recognized as the most powerful power in the region. China has made frivolous claims to the South China Sea, the Senkaku Islands, and seas around Japanese territorial waters. In fact, China harbors territorial claims to virtually every one of the countries that share a contiguous border. The International Court of Justice has dismissed these claims as lacking a basis in international law. But under Mr. Xi, China has persisted in pressing these claims. Meanwhile, the Chinese have increasingly sailed their warships through waters claimed, with good cause, by other neighbors. This has led to near collisions and unsafe sailing in close proximity to warships of other nations. These nations have roundly rejected Chinese claims and sought the support of the United States to defend those claims. A number of these countries, including Japan, the Philippines, and Vietnam, have also enhanced cooperation with one another, recognizing that they will all stand together or they will all fall separately. President Biden and his Vice President Kamala Harris, who is running to replace him, have pushed back vigorously against Chinese territorial claims, reinforcing American alliances with our many allies and friends in the Asia-Pacific region. We have also increased arms sales to our friends and allies in response to China's increased bullying and bogus territorial claims. Kamala Harris, in her quest to be the next president of the United States, has so far continued President Biden's strong support for our friends and allies and their legitimate territorial waters. She is working assiduously to deepen her knowledge of the defense needed to maintain our alliances, showing an ability to rapidly familiarize herself with the Biden policies and any necessary additions aimed at crafting a bipartisan approach to defending Taiwan's territorial integrity. Should Donald Trump regain the White House this fall, he would still face strong pressure from the Congress as well as state governments to continue to support Taiwan's territorial integrity and democratic system. Both the House and the Senate are firmly behind this process on a broadly bipartisan basis. In the meantime, the PRC economy is stalling at a time when many of its regional neighbors are thriving. The absence of a genuine give and take in the authoritarian Xi regime hampers efforts to institute the necessary structural reforms. This suggests China will become increasingly stagnant in its growth, limiting its impact domestically as well as regionally. The West has also increasingly pushed back against China on the economic front with tariffs and other trade restrictions. This process is likely to continue with negative impact on China's domestic and international policies. The fact is that China lacks very many real friends or allies in East Asia. It will be difficult to turn its economy around in the short term, which could trigger protests and demonstrations by a population at home given little voice in governance already. China also faces a declining population, including more young men unable to find a bride as a result of the earlier one-child policy. It's going to take years, if not decades, to rectify this. Taiwan should continue to bolster its defenses, especially in the Taiwan Strait and contiguous waters. American, Japanese, Philippine, and South Korean governments can also play a productive role in this process, though it's going to take time to rectify past differences in our specific response to Chinese aggression. The United States Congress has long nurtured strong bipartisan support for Taiwan and its security. No matter who wins the presidential elections this fall, the Congress will insist on broad continuity in our Asian policy. That will include continuing arms sales to Taiwan and projecting a tough stance toward any efforts by Beijing to threaten or attack this island. We would also discourage steps by any of our friends and allies to move in any way to enhance Chinese military capabilities. That would include trading relations that enhance the PRC's ability to project military power within the broader Asia-Pacific region, especially insofar as Beijing continues its aggressive reach, either militarily or economically. Should Beijing moderate its aggrandizing territorial goals, these measures could be moderated or reduced. Much hinges on America's November elections. If Kamala Harris is elected, she will demonstrate strong continuity with the Biden team. Donald Trump is less predictable, but if re-elected, he would still face significant opposition to any substantive shift away from Taipei. The American Congress, across party lines, has long supported moral and material support for Taipei and its democratic system, and this is unlikely to change in the foreseeable future. Beijing faces significant challenges today. To the extent China continues to advance bogus territorial claims, it will remain isolated. The region would monitor Beijing's power projection and respond in words and actions should China persist in its economic and territorial policies aimed at threatening the legal and constructive economic practices of its neighbors. In sum, while still unlikely, a hot war in the Taiwan Strait or anywhere around the island could quickly escalate into a direct conflict between the United States and its Asian allies and friends. Xi Jinping has engaged in careless talk of a battle around the strait. The PLA's capabilities have expanded under Xi, but still are assessed as no match to American force projection, especially when you factor in major Asian allies like Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, and some of our ASEAN friends. While one must not be careless in assessing the danger of a major regional war triggered by Mr. Xi, his inner circle might balk at any major conflict in the Asian-Pacific Rim. So long as Washington can continue to work closely with our friends and allies in the region, I believe the prospect of such a disastrous conflict remains a risk no one wants to pursue. I will be watching closely how our congressional and military people, as well as our friends in the region, respond to any additional threat of a shooting war with Beijing. In the mix, we must also consider the possibility of military clashes triggered by local events in the region. I wish I could say the mechanisms to prevent this were firmly in place, but I fear that any one of the players could either intentionally or by accident set in motion a downward spiral no one wants, but might find difficult to prevent. As the saying goes, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Now, unless you want me to take questions, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Young, for the excellent speech. Now we're delighted to have Dr. Andrew Scobell, Distinguished Fellow of USIP, to deliver a speech on the topic of the domestication of grand strategy China under Xi Jinping. Please, Dr. Scobell.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning, and I want to thank the Institute for National Policy Research and the Mainland Affairs Council for the opportunity to participate in this timely conference. It's a privilege to be able to offer some remarks to this august group of scholars and analysts. First, allow me a moment to say a few words about the place that I work, the U.S. Institute of Peace. Founded 40 years ago by members of Congress, the U.S. Congress, who were veterans, who had experienced war firsthand, and believed that the United States should pay more attention to building and perpetuating peace around the world. So, as Secretary General Wu noted, the world is in a very warlike, intense situation in multiple areas. So that suggests that the U.S. Institute of Peace isn't doing a very good job, and we need to work a lot harder. But a few months ago, a Uber driver dropped me off outside the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is on the corner of Constitution Avenue and 23rd Street in Washington, right across from the State Department, just north of the beautiful Lincoln Memorial. And I commented that the war, that the U.S. Institute of Peace wasn't doing such a good job. And the driver made me feel a lot better. He said, peace is not just the responsibility of Institute of Peace. Peace is everyone's responsibility. We all need to work hard. So it made me feel better, and I gave him a big tip. But seriously, I think it is everyone's job. But obviously, it's a very hard one. Otherwise, the world would be a much more peaceful and tranquil place. The U.S. Institute of Peace has long had a China program, and this was energized by the late Ambassador Dick Solomon, who led the Institute for almost 20 years. Most recently, USIP is building up its Taiwan-related programming, and we are proud to be partnering with very dynamic agencies and organizations in Taiwan. They include the National Security Council, the National Fire Agency, INDSR, and the Prospect Foundation. All right, enough throat clearing. Let me get to the topic of my remarks by way of three observations, initial observations. Observation number one, the PRC has never been stronger or more secure than it is today. Yet, at the same time, the mainland's Chinese Communist Party rulers have probably never felt more insecure in decades than they feel in 2024. Observation number two, under Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party is probably more ambitious today than it has been under any previous leader, including Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. Observation number three, in 2024, the PRC is probably viewed more negatively and more alarmingly by its own neighbors, including Taiwan, and many more countries around the world than at any other time in the post-Mao era. So stronger, more ambitious, more threatening, sounds ominous. Can the situation really be that bad? I think it might be, but not for the reasons typically proffered by today's talking heads. So, talking about China's grand strategy and what I call the domestication of that grand strategy. In 2017, I was a researcher at the RAND Corporation. The Pentagon asked for a report to examine what long-term competition with the People's Republic of China might look like out to 2049 or 2050. I proposed the RAND project team employ the rubric of grand strategy, and we did. I lead authored the resulting report published in 2020 titled China's Grand Strategy, Trends, Trajectories, and Long-Term Competition. A key finding of that report was that the PRC's grand strategy was domestic focused. And the report looked at economic, technological, and security factors, as well as CCP efforts to strengthen internal stability and tighten domestic central controls over the economy, the coercive apparatus, and society. Not that the CCP under Xi Jinping didn't have an external agenda and was not intent on raising the PRC's profile around the world. It certainly did, and it certainly does. The one of the goals of the report was to provide a corrective to existing treatments of grand strategy that consider grand strategy as synonymous with the PRC's foreign policy aspirations, or as a master plan for global expansion or long-term international ambitions. Yet the CCP has always been domestically focused and preoccupied with security at home. For CCP leaders, national security starts in the street right outside the walls of Zhongnanhai. National security for the PRC really means regime security. But you already knew that. Beyond this, though, conventional scholarly wisdom employs the term regime survival. And the mantra is often some variant of, quote, regime security is the paramount priority of the Communist Party, unquote. I think, however, this terminology is misleading. The word survival implies a condition of desperation and urgency. The Communist Party leaders are fearful of the regime's imminent demise, terrified of collapse or overthrow tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. But I just don't think that's particularly accurate. I don't think that Xi Jinping and his Politburo Standing Committee colleagues are so worried about the short term. Of course, Xi Jinping and company are not taking any chances, so they remain ever vigilant with a muscular, proactive coercive apparatus, and a high-technology surveillance system, as well as oppressive central controls and tight management of information in the media. But what CCP leaders are really fearful of is the medium and long-term existence of Communist Party rule. So that is 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years into the future. Hence, an obsession with planning, central planning. A myriad of 5-year plans, 10-year plans, even longer plans that cover virtually everything, anything you can imagine. So rather than regime survival, I prefer the term regime perpetuation. Speaking of grand strategy, to my mind, the best book on PRC grand strategy is Rush Doshi's The Long Game. Don't overlook the subtitle of that book either. It's China's Grand Strategy to Displace American Order. So Doshi's analytical rigor, cogent conceptual framework, and extensive mining of primary sources stand out from other treatments of Chinese grand strategy. Doshi asserts that the CCP has been implementing a two-step master plan since 1989. First to blunt US power and influence, then in 2008, he says, the CCP switched to a more proactive, assertive grand strategy of building its own global influence, institutions, and power. But what is grand strategy? And does the PRC or the CCP have one? To answer the first question, there are lots of definitions of grand strategy. My preferred definition is one that I formulated with a leading IR scholar, international relations scholar on the mainland some years ago. Our definition was, quote, grand strategy is the process by which a state or a regime relates long-term ends to means under the rubric of an overarching and enduring vision to advance the national or regime interests. So that's our succinct definition, and I confess, influenced this ways means conception. Ways means conception is influenced by strategists at the U.S. Army War College where I used to work, but also by leading scholars like Wang Jise and Zhu Feng and the PRC. Indeed, this definition was developed as part of a project on grand strategy and U.S.-PRC relations when I was on the faculty of the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. So does the PRC have a grand strategy? Experts disagree. Some argue yes, like Rush Doshi, and others argue no. Indeed, Wang Jise, in an article published in Foreign Affairs more than 10 years ago, argued that the PRC doesn't have a grand strategy. Wang's essay, by the way, was originally written and presented as part of the Texas A&M University project on grand strategy in U.S.-China and U.S.-PRC relations. But the question is, why can serious scholars disagree or differ on whether the CCP has a grand strategy or not? I think the answer is because the evidence is 不太清楚. It's not too clear. Why? The process of documenting the existence of a grand strategy is inherently a social science endeavor, not a matter of hard scientific inquiry. After all, bureaucracies do not produce detailed documents with titles like the Grand Strategy of the People's Republic of China. And political leaders don't deliver rousing 3-hour, don't worry, I won't give a 3-hour talk, speeches with titles like Chairman Xi's Grand Strategy for the Motherland in the New Era. Instead, as we know, bureaucracies publish white papers on specific topics of state policy and national strategies to address major issues, while senior leaders talk about priority projects or inspirational ideas. In fact, I would submit grand strategy is the domain of international relations scholars and historians, rather than the purview of statesmen. In other words, a researcher must interpret or tease out a grand strategy by reading between the lines of documents and connecting the dots between different documents and speeches. In fact, the existence, or indeed the existence of a grand strategy is not an objective scientific fact, but a subjective social science interpretation. Does the CCP under Xi Jinping have a grand strategy? I think it does. And his bumper sticker is national rejuvenation. But it is far from a detailed master plan for regional or global domination. The ruling Chinese Communist Party, while not devoid of international ambition, has a priority of maintaining absolute political power at home. Hence, the CCP is preoccupied domestically and focused upon medium and long-term planning to ensure the perpetuation, as I mentioned, of party rule. The CCP continues to be acutely paranoid, fearing enemies and threats, both real and imagined, particularly on the domestic front. Hence, devoting vast sums of money, resources, and manpower to securing party rule at home, which really means that also some of that cannot be used externally. So under Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party has doubled down on bolstering internal security mechanisms and its coercive apparatus. While national rejuvenation, or making China great again, is mainly domestic focused, it also includes unprecedented foreign policy ambitions, both regionally and globally. On its face, growing foreign policy ambitions may seem puzzling. If there's heightening alarm to the perceived existential threat to party rule, then logically, the Chinese Communist Party might completely wall off the People's Republic of China from the outside world as the ultimate protective means. But what has happened so far? That hasn't happened yet. This is what I call the paradox of the PRC's post-now greatly outward. That thinking locally, i.e. concerned with domestic matters, demands that Chinese Communist Party leaders must continue to act and engage globally. And under Xi Jinping, acting globally entails increasing ambition and effort. To wrap up, the domestication of grand strategy under Xi Jinping may be less of a drag on PRC international activism than in the past. While the economic impulse for overseas activism may be declining, the CCP's quest to advance the PRC's status as a global power of major consequence seems to be rising. This could make Xi Jinping's PRC more outwardly adventurous in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Scobell for the excellent speech. Now we have a 10-minute break time. Please come back and be seated at 11.
things that happen
不然的话就是他讲话的时候把脸放大一点。
要名人的，对不对？
好，也是挺累的。
不好意思。
戴口罩没有对。谢谢。主要有在做研究生，这边就是偶尔来嘛，然后开课这样。我会做的事情，他们做的其实想要把把它弄更简单，因为我们之前跟他行为的话，它是进行它的参数也有点问题，而且它太简单讲太复杂，所以推广上，我学长是希望把它更简单，然后把它更谢谢。好，蛮多人问我到底是做。我有参与他们的那个规则设计，尤其军事那块是大。对。我是社学的。
学长啊，好久没遇到了。今天你看起来很忙的。
哦。没有，就那都是因为国政师长今天开课到南投那边，到南投那边开课。南投没有啦，是高雄，也是一个军工单位。军工单位，然后兵政中心没有，也去海军单位指挥，做那边也有去自贡店，在6站。我说那个新站，就是那个政务中心旁边那个。放的话，军方都是讲一些小兵开始对，然后最近跟习近平做你教我的时候还教我自己你教我的技能。我之前有看你说那个海军火箭军像国将军在这个协会是办什么？你要指这个吗？就是基金，就是那个本身，他只是一个问题，就是他的电视会然后拿一篇文写成一个简短的报告，然后可能之后会发布。就那天写完会下一版。好，我真的可能发布的时候，这个下面的视角就会拿掉，因为它很多东西都是我不想让大家知道是怎么收的，但是我有在努力。都忙你好，我在看。谢谢。我你希望我怎么样？有吧？我之前有讲。
Welcome back to the International Conference on the Political, Economic, and Social Development Trends in Mainland China under Xi Jinping's leadership. The first panel, Analysis of the Power Structure, Domestic Governance, and Party Lines under Xi Jinping's rule is now starting. Let's welcome the panelists of Panel 1. Before starting, please look at the camera. The person raising hand, please look at the camera in the center. 请各位老师看中间的相机。Panel 1 is now starting, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. My name is Hongren Wang, the Executive Director of INPR, also as one of the moderators for this panel. I am really pleased to have you all here for today's international conference. This section will focus on the power structure, domestic governance, and the party direction under the leadership of Xi Jinping, and how the changes in recent years have impact on Taiwan and the international community. We have an exciting section ahead with many well-known scholars from both Taiwan and abroad joining us for the discussion. Given the limited time, I won't take up too much of it. Without further ado, let me first invite our co-moderator, Deputy Minister Liang Wenjie from the Mainland Affairs Council to say a few words.
Director Wang and distinguished scholars and experts, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Mainland Affairs Council, I'm honored to participate in this conference. And as we all know, since Xi Jinping took office in 2012, he has ended collective leadership and lifted term limits. That is, he has imposed a one-man rule in China. In my opinion, whether the Cross Strait peace and China-US relation can be maintained, Xi Jinping himself is undoubtedly the most critical factor. This morning, China announced the Joint Sword B exercise to intimidate Taiwanese people once again. Given that Vladimir Putin was personally responsible for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the future of Taiwan, China, or even the world is also up to Xi Jinping's personal ambition and the political calculation. That is the most important issue for this panel. I'm looking forward to see all of yours perspectives and insightful discussions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite our distinguished guest who has traveled from afar, a Japanese well-known scholar with extensive research on the history of the Chinese parties, Professor Anami from the Faculty of Law at Tohoku University. Professor, you have around 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I would like to briefly introduce two worrisome features of Xi Jinping's regime and present my general opinion on what Japan, the United States, and Taiwan should do to deal with this regime. Especially, I would like to indicate the serious dilemma which the Xi Jinping regime has been imposing on the international community. I will argue that the governance of Xi is incompatible with peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific region, and that Japan, the United States, and Taiwan need to face the reality that as long as Xi Jinping is in power, it is unrealistic to expect a stable and prosperous relationship with China. So let me start from explaining the extremely worrisome features of the Xi Jinping regime. The first feature of the regime is individual dictatorship with no institutional constraints whatsoever. This is not the first time the People's Republic of China was under individual dictatorship. The bitter memories of the infamous rulership of Mao Zedong still haunts millions of Chinese today. To prevent another tragedy like the Cultural Revolution, the CCP introduced 3 measures to prevent extreme concentration of power. That is, collective leadership, mandatory retirement system, and a fixed term system. However, what Xi has been doing for the past decade is getting rid of these institutional devices. And the fact that he is now in his 3rd term as the president of the PRC, at the age of 71, with a Politburo occupied with his own henchmen, indicates that individual dictatorship is back into business. There are multiple factors that enabled Xi to revive individual dictatorship. One crucial factor is his close personal ties with the PLA. In China, where the military belongs to the party rather than the state, personal connections with the military become a vital asset for power struggles within the party. Strong personal ties with the largest field army of the PLA during the Chinese Civil War, the 4th Field Army, and its commander Lin Biao was Mao Zedong's major political asset that enabled him to crush his rivals and assume exclusive power. However, this political alliance made Lin Biao and his faction powerful enough to threaten Mao's position as the supreme leader. So in the early 1970s, Mao decided to crack down on the 4th Field Army faction with assistance from other factions based on field armies, namely the 2nd Field Army. It is no coincidence that Deng Xiaoping, who was the top political officer of the 2nd Field Army during the Civil War, assumed the leadership of the CCP after Mao's death. Backed by his strong ties with the officer corps of the 2nd Field Army, Deng introduced the Reform and Opening Up policy, which emphasized collective leadership, institutionalization of power, and rapid economic development through trade with the capitalist states. His ties with the 2nd Field Army were also utilized when Deng decided to crack down on the democratization movement by force in 1989. Deng's 2 successors, Jiang Zemin and Hu Jitao, both lacked personal ties with the PLA, and party military factions based on field army connections were considered obsolete since most of the members had passed away. But the Xi Jinping regime has shown us that the field army connections didn't die out. Rather, it was passed on to the 2nd generation. As this slide shows, both Xi Jinping and Zhang Youxia, who is the highest ranking general in the PLA, happen to be sons of core leaders of the 1st Field Army. These 2 have maintained close ties since they were kids, and now they are the chairman and vice chairman of the Central Military Committee within the Communist Party, which controls the entire PLA. This kind of strong personal connections with the top leaders of the PLA enabled Xi to strengthen his grip over the military by purging more than 100 generals, and the strong grip over the PLA made Xi powerful enough to get rid of collective leadership and reinstall individual dictatorship. Therefore, the current regime of China inevitably contains a strong militant character. Only Xi can control the military, but at the same time, he heavily relies on his buddies in the military to expand and maintain his position as supreme leader. Now let us look at the second worrisome feature of the Xi Jinping regime. That is xenophobic nationalism combined with the legitimacy of individual dictatorship. Okay. Ever since the Tiananmen incident in 1989, the CCP has emphasized the threat of foreign conspiracy aimed to topple the communist regime and put China under submission to the global order led by the United States and its allies. To avoid such humiliation, the people of China have been told through education and propaganda to unite under the CCP, which lead the path to the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, in which a rising China would challenge the hegemony of the United States. The revival of militarism in Japan has also been another threat the CCP has been fanning for the past 3 decades. The CCP's policy of fanning xenophobic nationalism generated a serious dilemma where anti-US and anti-Japanese sentiment steadily accumulated within China while economic interdependence with these two countries kept getting stronger. As a result, economic interdependence failed to become a solid foundation for stability between China and the US-Japan alliance. Rather, we have witnessed the rise of diplomatic and military tensions with China, while our business communities have enhanced their dependence on China. Xi became the new leader under this kind of domestic atmosphere. As a result, he chose to become the symbol of an outspoken China and a leader that would realize the great rejuvenation. And this is how xenophobic nationalism and hardline diplomacy became interlinked with Xi's own prestige as the sole leader of China. And due to that linkage, it has become extremely difficult for the Chinese government to make compromises in the international political arena. The main task regarding the Great Rejuvenation is taking back the so-called lost territories, with Taiwan being on top of the list. Until the 1970s, the PLA lacked a Navy and Air Force capable enough to carry out such tasks. Ironically, the normalization of US-Japan relations and massive investment towards China by the capitalist state, which followed, allowed the CCP and PLA to embark on a large-scale military buildup of its Navy and Air Force starting from the 1990s. It was clear already when the Taiwan Strait crisis of 1996 broke out that economic interdependence between China and the US inevitably escalates military tension instead of harboring peace and security. The Taiwan Strait crisis of 2022 is another example which shows economic ties with China can do little to cool down China's assertiveness. As I mentioned before, only Xi can stop the PLA from escalating these tensions. However, Xi's own prestige and credibility as the sole supreme leader of China relies on retrieving the lost territories. So Xi can't back down on this issue. This means the Xi Jinping regime has fallen into a political deadlock where it can't get out of its own hardline diplomacy. As I mentioned earlier, the CCP has been able to allocate huge sums of money to the PLA under the environment where the developed countries have been pouring huge amounts of investment and economic aid into China. What we need to understand is that China didn't rise by itself. It was raised by the developed countries. In other words, our economic ties with China are the main source of China's military expansion. So the United States, Japan, and Taiwan not only have to cope with China's assertiveness by enhancing their military capabilities, but they also need to seriously reconsider their overall economic relations with China. I think it is quite ridiculous to try to hedge the risks driving from China while adding fuel to it. I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Anami. Next, we have our senior advisor and board member of INPR, Advisor Ro致政, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Wang. Honorable panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today we gather here to discuss a very important topic, that is the ongoing transformation of China under the leadership of Xi Jinping. Obviously, there are so many things we can talk about today, but my analysis will focus on China's transition from a system of authoritarianism towards increasingly totalitarian tendency. For decades, China's political structure was often characterized as authoritarian. However, under Xi's leadership, we have witnessed a clear shift. In this paper, I explore three key areas of this transformation. In brief, this shift is characterized by Xi Jinping's centralization of political power, intensification of social control, and the relentless indoctrination of Xi Jinping's ideology. To understand this transition, we must first clarify the differences between authoritarianism and totalitarianism. While both systems limit individual freedoms and concentrate power, they differ in their scope and methods of control. To me, authoritarianism is characterized by concentration of power in a leader or small elite, with a limited political pluralism and suppression of anti-regime activities. The state, however, does not necessarily aim for complete control over all aspects of life. Authoritarian regime typically allows some degree of autonomy in economic, social, and cultural spheres. Totalitarianism, on the other hand, is a more extreme form of authoritarianism that seeks total control over all aspects of public and private life. It employs extensive propaganda, a single-party system, and social control mechanisms to ensure total loyalty from the citizens. Totalitarian regimes aim to control all aspects of society, political, economic, cultural, and social, through centralized power, pervasive surveillance, and the manipulation of ideology. Authoritarianism and totalitarianism, of course, are not dichotomous concepts. Rather, they represent degrees of difference on a continuum. While both authoritarianism and totalitarianism are systems that limit individual freedoms and concentrate power, they differ fundamentally in their scope and methods of control. My following presentation will focus on how China under Xi Jinping has exhibited a number of key features of totalitarian governance. First, political power has become increasingly centralized, with Xi Jinping effectively eliminating political rivals and consolidating his control over the CCP. Xi's ascent to power is marked by a notable departure from the collective leadership model that characterized the tenure of his predecessors. Over the past decade, Xi Jinping has gradually and systematically dismantled institutional checks on his authority, placing allies in key positions and purging potential rivals. Centralized control over the party, military, and government institutions creates an atmosphere where loyalty to Xi is paramount. He has also abolished the presidential term limits, which suggest an ambition to rule for life. Xi's consolidation of power is undeniable. He's abolished presidential term limits, effectively positioning himself as a paramount leader and wielding unprecedented control over the Chinese Communist Party. This move, along with a sweeping and aggressive anti-corruption campaign, has effectively silenced dissent and silenced dissenting voices within the party. In addition, under Xi's rule, we have witnessed increased state control over society, encompassing advancements in surveillance technology and the suppression of dissent. The system is designed to instill fear and conformity, ensuring adherence to the CCP's narrative. The systems of so-called social credit system monitor citizens' actions and behaviors, rewarding good behavior and punishing bad one, creating a climate of fear and self-censorship. Moreover, the suppression of dissent has reached unprecedented levels, with journalists, activists, and even ethnic minorities effectively silenced. The Xinjiang re-education camps are a chilling example of this oppressive policy. As I argue in this paper, the intensity of social control and manipulation of information in contemporary China bears striking similarities to the dystopian world depicted in George Orwell's 1984. The implementation of such totalitarian governance is illustrated clearly through the systematic repression of ethnic minorities, notably in Xinjiang and Tibet. Finally, Xi Jinping's regime has been actively indoctrinating the population with his ideology. Xi Jinping has sought to reshape the ideological landscape in China, promoting his own brand of Xi Jinping thought and promoting a narrative of national unity under the CCP authority. The concept of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era is now enshrined in China's PRC's constitution, solidifying his ideological dominance and emphasizing the CCP's absolute control over all aspects of life. This ideology emphasizes socialism, party supremacy, strong leadership, and national unity. To summarize, under Xi Jinping, China has demonstrated a shift towards totalitarian tendencies, marked by a move away from the relative autonomy enjoyed in some areas during his predecessors. Finally, let me talk about the implications and the challenges for China. The implications of this shift towards totalitarianism are significant. This increasingly totalitarian approach represents a profound challenge to the future of governance in China. It raises concerns about the CCP's long-term legitimacy, the potential for political instability, and the erosion of individual freedoms in China. The trajectory towards totalitarianism presents several challenges and uncertainties for China. The first is domestic discontent. Increased control and repression could lead to growing discontent among the population, potentially undermining the CCP's legitimacy. In addition, Xi's desire for indefinite power raises some very important questions about the future succession process and its potential power on political stability. Finally, Xi Jinping's rule has implications for the global stage. This move towards totalitarianism coincides with a more assertive and revisionist foreign policy and military strategy, raising concerns about China's growing influence and the potential for military conflicts in the region and in the world. In conclusion, Xi Jinping's tenure marks a critical transitional period in China's history of political development. Xi's centralization of power, intensification of social control, and ideological indoctrination have transformed China's political system. This transition from authoritarianism to totalitarianism raises profound questions about the future of governance not only within China, but also within the global context. While the country may enjoy short-term stability under a highly centralized and controlled system, the long-term implications of this shift towards totalitarianism remain uncertain. Let me stop here. I look forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for the advisory role. Following that, we are having Dr.董立文, President of the Foundation on Asia Pacific Peace Studies. Please.
Thanks. Good morning or good afternoon. In the conference booklet, I provide my lecture notes in Chinese, as you can see. My topic is on Xi Jinping's power consolidation and the power succession problems. As we know, the Constitution of the Chinese Communist Party and the Constitution of the People's Republic of China do not have relevant provisions on how the top leader is elected and how he leads. The Xi Jinping's power succession and high-level governance methods have never developed a clear rule to follow. This is the greatest uncertainty in China's political development and the most vulnerable part of the communist autocratic regime. However, after Deng Xiaoping, the Xi Jinping established some rules, practice, or tacit understandings about the tenure system, collective leadership system, and the power succession, which forced the Xi Jinping's power operation and the power succession to develop in an institutional direction. In the 12 years since the Xi Jinping came to power, he has abolished the political norms and the rules established by the Xi Jinping, destroyed all the political conventions and the tacit understandings, and fails to appoint or train a successor. The consequences of this not only put himself in danger, but also put the Xi Jinping and China's future in crisis. Of course, the most important reason why Xi Jinping is able to concentrate all his power and move toward re-election is that Communist Party's system guaranteeing the function of one leader, one hand with everything. 一把手，一手抓 in Chinese. And Xi also makes good use of this system function to constantly wield the party whip to transform the party machinery to concentrate power has not stopped so far. He mainly used 4 methods to achieve personal power centralization. 1. Continuous establish and service as main person in charge of all domain, essential decision-making and coordination commissions or leading groups. 2. Establish a system for the 5 major party groups and the political bureau to report their work or debrief to Xi Jinping. 3. Continue to dispatch various central supervision teams to inspect all central agencies and the local governments and directly control central and local agents. 4. Continue to issue many new regulations on party members and carriers. In politics, feudalism can be simply summed up into 3 characteristics. First, the imperial owned the whole world. Second, the country is governed by paternalism. And third, the hereditary system. In 1980, Deng Xiaoping emphasized we should put forward the task of continuing to eliminate the influence of feudalism in ideological and political aspects, and make a series of practical reforms in the system. Otherwise, the country, the people, will continue to suffer losses. At that time, Deng Xiaoping could set the tone of the lifetime tenure for leadership positions and paternalism as a traditional feudalism. According to this standard, at the 20th National Congress of the CCP, Xi Jinping has feudalized the Chinese Communist Party. Not only has he officially abolished the term system, he has also made the entire party one country, one people, and one ideology. No critical comments on Xi is allowed, and place individuals above the organization. To cement his hold on power, Xi effectively prohibits any plan for succession. However, Xi Jinping's rule is not true feudalism, because feudalism has another important feature, which is the borderline theory of power succession. For example, the North Korea regime is truly feudal communism, which is a belief in the everlasting rule of what is called the mountain battle or borderline, referring to a king dynasty. In terms of rule for the succession of political power, Xi Jinping is worse than North Korea. The CCP has no such rules for the succession of the power based on blood. At present, it is generally commented that Xi Jinping's power is very stable. The main reason is that no one dares to openly oppose him, whether inside or outside the party. However, I don't dare to make such an assertion, because from the perspective of power indicators, Xi Jinping's rule has seen too many abnormal phenomena in the past 12 years. 1. From the perspective of the personnel power, Xi can appoint people to any position at will. However, the government's personnel changes too frequently, not to mention the recent sudden disappearance of the foreign minister and the defense minister, as well as the high-level military generals and the national security officials' continuous changes and disappearances. 2. From the perspective of policy, Xi undoubtedly holds the final decision-making power on policy. However, major domestic and external decisions in the past 12 years have often been contradictory, vacillating, and inconsistent. 3. From the perspective of organization, Xi can indeed transform the CCP's party, government, and military institutions at any time. However, the CCP's party, government, and military institutions have never operated stably. The institutional reforms has never stopped. 4. From the perspective of convening meetings or setting agendas, Xi can post for meetings and set agendas at will. However, the uncertainty of delayed meetings and agendas may be a counter-indicator that Xi Jinping's power is unstable. The only unchanging characteristic of Xi Jinping's rule is dare to fight, have courage to fight, and fight to the end. Like a bird without feet, it always flies on the law of struggle for the centralization of power. The most fundamental reason why Xi Jinping's rule is unstable is that there are no political rules of game. The Chinese government's annual fiscal budget exceeds 28 trillion RMB, which means that 28 trillion yuan is bet on the Chinese political gambling table every year. However, there are no rules of game for such a big political bet, which puts Xi Jinping in crisis every day. I think this should be the most dangerous job in the world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for President董立文very concise points on the current leadership of Xi Jinping. For the last presenters in this panel, we will hear from Director Ubin of the China Affairs Department at the DPP.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to the host and the previous professors for providing excellent explanations about China and Xi Jinping. My article was originally written in response to an invitation for Taiwan Syntech. Because it is a short article, it is mostly a collection of arguments, but there is a huge lack of empirical data. However, because it is related to the theme of this forum, I would like to take this opportunity to translate it into English and use it to explain my observation on Xi Jinping's regime. My discussion today was included three parts. The first is Chinese modernization different? Second, Xi's strategy for China's turning point. And three, political participations under Xi. My basic argument is, although the first democratic movement in China after reform and opening up was Tiananmen 事件 was forcefully suspended, China's modernization process did not stop. It continues to follow the modernization theory and lead to the small-scale expansion of China's political participation space in some places. First, let's review China's social development and its limitations. 1980s, in the early days of the reform and the opening up, Chinese society was greatly liberated, and various theory and foreign ideas flourished. The result of the first large-scale political participation, Tiananmen 事件, the Tiananmen movement attracted worldwide attention. But the outcome of the incident was that the Beijing government used military crackdowns to stifle the call for democracy. Go to the 1990s, grassroots held elections across China everywhere. It is a real bright spot in China's political participation. It was once considered to be an important starting point for Chinese democratization, but the CCP automatically limited the possibility of extending these elections to higher levels and changed its focus to more controlled intra-party democracy. 2000s, a group of rights of defenders or rights lawyers have emerged in Chinese society. I'm sorry for that. Sorry. Okay, let me check. 我要指哪边 ？Sorry, it's not working.再给我下一页 ，next one. OK， 谢谢。OK， 我现在要再下2页哦。OK, this way. OK. 2000s, a group of rights defenders and rights lawyers have emerged in Chinese society, using legal or social actions to safeguard various rights, including human rights and political freedoms. The most famous among them is the Chapter 08 08宪章 initiated by Liu Xiaopo and others in 2009 or 2008. It attracted great attention from the CCP and banned it. And the CCP strengthened the work of the Stability Maintenance Office. Next. Okay. Chinese reform and opening not only created huge economic success, but also brought about new social contradictions, forming a pressure cooker for China's society. That was also an important challenge faced by Xi Jinping when he came to power. In the early days of Xi Jinping's sections, high-level politics is full of the rumors, including unstable events and factional fightings. In state social relations, the period from 2009 to 2010 was an important period of mutual growth and decline between right protection and the government's stability maintenance. Next. Okay. The most important thing about Xi Jinping's governance strategy is that the party controls everything. In Chinese, 党管一切. It means strengthening the leadership of the CCP. It can be divided into three aspects. One is promote party ideology. Starting from the party school below the party, we call 党校信党, and the next, military newspapers, 党报, and the third is official media, 就是官媒, and the fourth, the state-owned enterprises, 国企都是要follow below the party. And the second, strengthen the social control, including suppressing dissidents, supervising social organizations, and establish the large-scale surveillance systems, and so on. And the third, rule the country by law. And what Xi Jinping constantly emphasized, 依法治国. I mean, implement the party controls everything at the legal level to maintain political security. Next. Okay. We can check the Hong Kong case and as an sample of the one country, two systems. Hong Kong used to have a unique status as a place outside of China's framework. However, Hong Kong's spatial status became a significant thorn in Xi Jinping's side. So what he do? After 2019, he used many tools to control Shanghai. Next. Okay. Before Xi Jinping came to power, social conflict caused by reform and opening had already reached a relatively high point for the internet and the real society. So many rights protections events occur everywhere. But recently, factors such as the 2019 Wuhan pneumonia epidemic and the poor economic recovery after the epidemic, and the economic stagnation have occurred. Some new struggles have begun to emerge in Chinese society, including, like the PPT says, the Beijing Xitong Bridge incident and the White Paper revolutions in 2022. Okay, in the end, finally, I propose for conclusions of this article. 1. China is not unique. The process of Chinese society development basically conforms to the modernization theory. I mean, the social is indeed gradually opening up. There is nothing special about this. However, Chinese society is relatively weak, and the CCP use more drastic measures to prevent its loss of power. This puts China out of tune with the modern world. And second, weak but sustained social response. I say in the PPT. And 3, Xi Jinping is returned to Mao's path. Although Xi Jinping was once expected to further promote China's reform based on Deng Xiaoping's legacy, but however, Xi Jinping's subsequent performance clearly proved that Xi Jinping was more committed to Mao Zedong path. In the end, fourth, history repeats itself. I mean, in the foreseeable future, the social atmosphere in China will still be very tense, and social conflicts will continue to accumulate, as in the historical experience of all the totalitarian governments. That's my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for Director Wu Junzi from the Democratic Progressive Party. So far, we have 4 presenters in this panel, and they all try to help us understand the current leadership under Xi Jinping from different angles and perspectives. I think we can find similar or common ingredients from their discussion and talking points. After them, we will have several distinguished discussants. First, I would like to invite Professor Suzuki, who has also traveled from Japan and is currently a professor at the Institute for Oriental Study, Baito Bunka University. Let me add one more point. He just published the book of The Rule and the Power of the Chinese Communist Party in the 21st century. So, Professor, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. 大家好，我是铃木隆，现在在东京的大东文化大学的进行重点研究的。首先，本人对国策研究院文教基金会的特别感谢，让我有机会这样的有意义的学术会议的。作为入场人，我只有5分钟，所以我英文的话也这样准备好了。下面我要读一读的。Well, I recently finished my book on Xi Jinping's political thought and leadership. Here, with the findings in my book, I would like to address just one point, that is Xi Jinping's personal rule and his power succession. First, I believe that Xi Jinping's regime will increasingly take on the characteristics of the Chinese pre-modern dynastic rule. In his book, Dr. Zhong Yongyan of Singapore University once pointed that the personal rule of Mao Zedong resembled the traditional emperorship of the monarchy. But after the reform and the opening up era, institutionalization of the CCP rule has greatly improved. Dr. Zhang also described this political development, the departure from the traditional emperorship to the organizational emperorship. However, since, as we all know, the 20th Party Congress in 2022, Chinese politics has been returning to the Xi Jinping's personal rule over totalistic regime like the Mao Zedong era. So, in the future, under Xi Jinping administration, China's political system will overall resemble the politics of the Mao Zedong politics, and it will even have the character of the pre-modern traditional emperors once described by Dr. Zhong Yongyan. However, I think that Xi Jinping may even revive dynastic political tradition that even Mao Zedong did not or cannot. This is the power succession based on lineage, the bloodline. As we all believe, the greatest weakness of the Xi Jinping's regime is the problem of power succession. He will have to decide his successor at some point. Meanwhile, by the big-scale anti-corruption campaign and severe power struggle, she has already made huge enemies. Of course, the CCP has no tradition of lineage-based power succession, but I think that Xi Jinping may dare to do it. In fact, Xi Jinping and Bo Xilai promoted in the party ranks by emphasizing family pedigree as a Taizudang or a Hongwak. There is a kind of hereditary politics. Today, there are no rivals to compete with the Xi Jinping the party. For sure, only just two things very important. One is to maintain his house to be the ruler for life. And the other is to ensure his reputation not to be tarnished after his death like Stalin. In terms of this view, it is not necessarily surprising that Xi Jinping will choose his successor from among the relatives of his own family, like North Korea, Singapore, then this is Taiwan. Otherwise, he will select the appropriate someone from the relatives of his close cronies, such as Cai Qi, Li Chang, and Lin Shui, as the top leader of the Hong Sandai or Hong Sudai. President Putin of Russia is said to consider Patrushev's son. Patrushev was the close crony, was regarded as the close crony, close side of Putin. President Putin of Russia is said to consider Patrushev's son as one of the candidates to succeed him. If these scenarios of the lineage-based power succession were to be realized, the CCP's governance definitely would enter a different dimension of the present day. That is short for my comment. Thank you very much.
Thanks for Professor Suzuki. I think every discussion so we can have more minutes, and so 82 minutes Professor Suzuki's discussion, and I think we can have more after each discussion to finish their talking points, so we can have some feedback maybe from the presenters or from our discussants. Next, we have a well-known figure in Taiwan, Professor Minju Zheng, an honorary professor from the Department of Political Science at National Taiwan University. Professor Min, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think I'd like to make a small correction. I'm a professor emeritus. Thank you. How much time do I have? I'm just good. 7 minutes? Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all right. After hearing all the intriguing presentations earlier today, I'd like to make a few comments and some response to the presentations. Because of the time limitations, I think I will make 3 talking points. The first one is about the major mistakes in Xi Jinping's policies ever since he got to power. as we all know, that Xi Jinping came to power in the year of 2012. So by now it's about 11, 12 years, but we can identify some of the major policy mistakes he made in the past decade or so. The first one I'd like to identify is the trade war with the United States. The United States began the trade war, or launched the trade war in early 2012, early 2018. At that time, Xi Jinping made some modest concession to the United States, I think the case would be a lot better. But somehow he decided to fight back on June the 15th, 2018. So the whole thing exacerbated greatly. Then it escalated to a technological war, and the chip war, as we all know. And then it leads to a series of sanctions and de-risking and all that. In addition to the ever stringent measures taken by the PRC side, such as enhancing the security law, national security law, or data security law, or the anti-spy law, or even the reenaction of the Article 23 of Hong Kong's Basic Law. So it makes the trade war between the United States and China even worse. So I think that's the first mistake that he made. And the effect, as you can see now, is the worsening of the economy. The second mistake I'd like to identify is the truncation of the one country, two system policy over Hong Kong. It leads to the serious outpouring of Hong Kong's talents and capital, and it causes a very embarrassing shrinkage of Hong Kong's economy, let alone its GDP and so on and so forth. So Hong Kong was what we call it, a golden goose, which made great contribution to China's economy, and then it turns back. So now the central government is making a very strong financial support for Hong Kong. So Hong Kong lost its position as a great contributor to China's economy, and that's a second mistake I'd like to identify. The third mistake I'd like to identify is the very stringent and very strict quarantine policy against COVID-19 since 2019, let alone the seemingly never-ending testing, which caused to a great loss in countries of financial capabilities. And the very strict quarantine policy almost suffocates China's business activities in the society. And then it leads to the corruption of the small businesses in the mediums. And also it caused people to waste their savings. So they're left with very, very little savings, according to what I know. I talked to many people from mainland and all the so-called Taiwanese for 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. And a number of Taiwanese businessmen who returned to Taiwan ever since that. I think the worst impact upon this very strict quarantine policy is that it leads to the downbreak of the confidence on the businessmen toward China's economy. And then it leads to the shrinkage of investment, and also leads to shrinkage of consumption, overall consumption in this society. The last mistake I'd like to identify is the so-called promotion of the state-owned enterprises, and leads to and then also the simultaneous suppression of the privately owned businesses. So in the end, it leads to the downgrade of economy and a very disturbing social competence, and then eventually it leads to a power struggle inside the party. The power struggle did not begin now. Actually, ever since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, he began a purge, a very serious purge of the people, the people inside the party and also inside the government. Let me call attention to this power struggle. The power struggle is not a one-way traffic. It works both ends. Xi Jinping launched a power struggle against some officials, but they fought back. They ganged up and fought back. So we see a very serious power struggle among the political elites, on the top echelon of the political elites ever since then. So then that leads to the last point I'd like to make is Xi Jinping's relations with the military people, or with the PLA people. He, like I said, he had a paranoia about his political status, so he was kind of uneasy. The paranoia would then eventually cause more and more political purges. As we all know that he purged the so-called the armed forces beginning in 2013 and almost wiped out completely. We have counted more than 15 generals were purged in a period of 2 years. And then there were over 100 generals purged for about a period of 10 years. And then beginning in 2023, last year, we noticed the purge of the rocket force. A number of the high commanders, including the three commanders, the top commanders, Wei Fenghe, Zhou Yangning, and Yu Shao, were purged in a row, let alone the junior leaders in the force. Then then we noticed the purge of the strategic support force. It was disbanded completely and replaced by the unit called the Information Support Force. And that's, again, it's unthinkable. In addition to all the purges of the military people, we also noticed the purge of the top echelon people of the military industries. I'm not going to get into details. So it leads to one observation: what is he worrying about? Is he really worrying about his position, or is he worried about what? And then, strangely, his relations with the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxiang, as we all noticed that Mr. Sullivan met Zhang Youxiang. It's a kind of strange, because this kind of thing happened before, but very, very rarely. And you'll notice that Zhang Youxiang was very happy. He was smiling from year to year, and when he was meeting with Sullivan. And Sullivan was quite calm, and Sullivan apparently tried to get some information from him, but I'm not sure what they come up to, but eventually. So it's, again, it's very unusual. And lastly, we noticed that the purge or the downgrade of Xi Jinping's close attachés, people in the in the PLA's discipline committee, and also in the Central Organization Department, and also in the Office of the Central Military Commission. So it's all related to him, and it's close political attaché. So what we're saying is that we have noticed that he's in a very uneasy position. So we don't know what else he can do to mend the troubles he's facing. So let me just stop here, and then I'd like to solicit your comments and questions. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks for Emeritus Professor Minju Zheng from National Taiwan University. Following him, we will hear from Professor童涵浦from the Department of Political Science at National Taiwan University. Professor Tong, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and it's a great pleasure to have a chance to be here to speak to the audience, and especially to share with you some of the academic findings we had recently. And well, I do agree with all the presenters about their summaries of what had happened under Xi Jinping. So first of all, indeed, there is a very interesting transformation in China that China used to be described as a party-based dictatorship. In other words, there were quite a few power-sharing arrangements among major factions, and they shared power with each other. But nonetheless, after Xi Jinping took power in 2012, it took some time, but what happened, of course, is that he is eventually concentrated lots of power in his own hands and also purged people from the party, just as Professor Ming just mentioned. So I would agree, of course, on this particular point with Professor Anami that indeed there's this kind of personalization of politics that happened in China. I think this has a very important implication for not only Chinese politics, but also for China's foreign relations. And the reason is, I think previously, it's probably all the speakers and discussants know very well, and some, I suppose, some experts in the audience. Power share arrangements is essential for kind of people to predict the succession politics and also kind of the political rules inside the party. So I would tend to think previously, even though of course China was a dictatorship, but because it's party-based, so there were, relatively speaking, some rules for people to follow. So, and especially of course, Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin, they were handpicked by Deng Xiaoping, and then Deng Xiaoping also, to a great extent, transformed the Chinese politics and basically make it more institutionalized. And I think as Professor, Anami and also Dr. Low mentioned, previously there seemed to be some rules, like the age rule and also the term limits, and now they were all lifted by Xi Jinping. So this movement towards a more personalistic dictatorship is beyond doubt. And so the important implication here, of course, is that previously the Chinese politics was relatively easier to predict and to understand, but now it has become much more unpredictable, and therefore I suppose it will create some fluctuations for how people understand Chinese politics, and also kind of undermine the political foundation on which foreign governments and investors can view China as a trustworthy partner. So that has a very profound implications for China. And also we can observe that from during the COVID, we can see that the zero COVID policy was lifted overnight, and then that was as I said, it's very unpredictable, right? So previously, people didn't understand well why the government sticks to that policy for such a long time, even though after the new variants came up, it's actually not wise to do that, but still, government did that anyway. But later, all of a sudden, it was lifted. So this is just another sign. And also, I think even at the early stage, when COVID just broke out, the problem here is that the information from below sometimes is hard to get up because of this monopoly of power, and also I think people working down below, they have also some fear about telling the truth. But what I would like to contribute here, on top of all these very nice summaries provided from the previous presenter, is the kind of some interesting findings I have with some friends at UC San Diego. So also some presenters mentioned this POA, right? Especially Xi Jinping's connection with POA. And also we had a paper on this. So Xi Jinping adopted this military reform in 2016, as you probably all know. And so I have to say, first of all, that's the most far-reaching reform since the death of Mao. And more importantly, enormous power was taken away from the three main departments of the POA, especially the General Strategy Department. And also 2 military regions were abolished. And this led to the disbanding of divisions and subsuming other divisions under new commands. And all these changes took effect on January 1st, 2016. Yet, the thing is, there was some strong hints of these changes as early as November 2013. And therefore, we spent some time collecting data on these trajectories of the POA officers. Let me just give you a quick description of our data set. So we collect more than 2,000 activities between 2012 and 2019. And more than those activities were about the military meetings Xi Jinping had with other generals. And also, especially, we track the career trajectories of the POA officers. So we collected biographical data for more than 500 POA officers, combining officers in the Central Committee and also POA officers from other data sets as well. So I only have 1 minute left. So maybe I have to kind of jump to the conclusion quickly. So after collecting so much data on the POA officers and also the events Xi Jinping was engaging, so the thing is, we know that this, I totally agree with Professor Ming about this power struggle inside the party, but at the same time, what we can do from that paper and from our analysis is that it seems that Xi Jinping was trying to adopt some kind of divide and rule strategy inside the party. And therefore, before 2016, if you analyze the promotion and purges of those POA officers, you see that, actually the people who have some connection with Xi Jinping, they were not necessarily promoted much, the chance for them to be promoted was not necessarily higher than other officers, affiliated with other leaders like Hu Jintao. Also, that also applies to the patterns of the purges. But what happened is that after 2016, after reform was finished, then that pattern disappeared. So it seems that after 2016, Xi Jinping promoted lots of people of his own and also purchased other people of other factions. So what's the lesson to be learned from that process? For ourselves, is that on one hand, as I said, it seems that Xi Jinping was trying to adopt this divide and rule strategy. So in other words, before the reform was implemented, he was trying to be very carefully deal with the relationship with other factions. Because, if the action was too severe before the reform, then you might actually help other officers to overcome the collective action problems and to have some resistance. So even though, as I said, I agree with Professor Ming about that power struggle inside the party, but on the outside, you didn't actually see that, the success of that kind of pushback against Xi Jinping. So Xi Jinping was trying to divide those opposition by giving some people the promotion opportunities while purging other people, and to lower, I guess, the alarming mindset from other officers. But right after the 2016, since the reform was implemented, so the power has been concentrated. So it seems that Xi Jinping, didn't care that much about the other factions at all, and then you can see that, after the finish of the concentration of power, basically Xi Jinping was able to do a lot of things that he wouldn't otherwise have, can do. So I think let me draw the conclusion here is that I think it's indeed such a worry that before that, if Xi Jinping still allowed for some diversity inside the party and inside the POA, but now after the concentration of power, it seems that Xi Jinping will only hear the voice from his people, and therefore they will also, I suppose, those people will try to curry favor from Xi Jinping, and therefore they don't dare to say anything against Xi Jinping's personal preferences. And that might actually lead to, I suppose, more mistakes in policies, either in military areas or other economic or political areas. So I'm going to end here and looking forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Peng, for sharing his, I think it's valuable and updated theoretical findings on the current leadership. Lastly, we will invite Professor Cai Rongxiang from National Zhongzheng University in Jiayi. Professor Cai, please.
Okay, thank you. Lunch is ready, so I just cut my dress. Okay, when Xi Jinping came to power, and he was deeply concerned about the fall of Communist Party in the Soviet Union, and he worked tirelessly to strengthen the party to avoid following their path. As General Secretary, Xi Jinping is considered the core of the party, reflecting a personalized approach to power. For Xi, he calls the shots, asserting the party leads in every domain, in all matters. according to Zhou Dang, actually he's my advisor's advisor, and he said, the key feature of CCP high-level politics is this: ability of a group to defeat and eliminate a major rival decisively. Chinese leaders always have assumed anti-party factions will emerge, and they must be either defeated or eliminated. So ultimately, this creates a hegemonic leadership model. Zhou Dang said CCP politics, high-level politics, has not prevented the rise of strong leaders. In fact, only strong leaders can emerge victorious. So Xi has consolidated power with the support of the ruling elite, who feel the party state could collapse if they did not back a strong leader, capable of taking decisive measures in response to unprecedented challenges and severe threats. It's like hunting a deer. Everyone understands the need to remain loyal to their posts and follow leaders' orders. So Xi aims to ensure that CCP remains the sole ruling party indefinitely. So President Xi and CCP cannot be challenged or questioned, and he is intolerant of any dissenting views and leverage national sentiment, nationalism in promoting great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, which he uses to suppress dissidents and perceived enemies within the state. We are witnessing the rise of digital totalitarian, according to Professor Rowe, in China, which monitors people's public lives in the name of security. Xi appears to feel insecure and perhaps sometimes even panicked about his leadership. He seems willing to sacrifice China's openness to the world in order to solidify his power base by tightening total control over Chinese society for the security of the CCP of himself. Xi holds absolute power as he appointed members to the Political Bureau and the Political Bureau Standing Committee at the 20th Party Congress based on their loyalty and ideological stances rather than their performance or ability. The problem with this approach is, like Professor Tong said, the supreme leader is surrounded by yes men who are expected to threaten him. No one dare to point out mistakes or policy failures. It means no one wants to be a child who tells the emperor he's not wearing any clothes at all. So the drivers of China's economy, like Professor Ming said, are becoming increasingly constrained. The country is facing a serious economic downturn characterized by slowing growth, soaring national debt, foreign capital flight, skyrocketing youth unemployment, a high mortgage default rate, and a shrinking population, just to name a few. Managing these multifaceted challenges is proving to be a daunting task. The Chinese economic model is significantly flawed, particularly as it relies on transferring money from the Chinese private companies or people to the government. So China is experiencing a middle income trap. I've already exhausted many low-hanging opportunities for growth. So it's becoming challenging to balance demand and supply in a declining economy. On a global dimension, China is facing a growing alliance of hostile rivals. So we are witnessing countries neighboring China, such as Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, Australia, of course Taiwan. You see today, 2024 joins World B. But the thing is that we are trying to cooperate with the United States to strengthen our militaries and unite against the China territory expansion and grey wrong activities. So China is taking its own medicine. China's assertive and bullying actions often refer to a wolf warrior diplomacy, which aims to seek ways to drive US out of Pacific, and having putting neighboring countries under it. The
U.S. relationship has evolved into an enduring rivalry, with each country singled out for intense security and economic or technological competition. When China is perceived as a weak power, as Professor Michael Beck said in his Peak China theory, it becomes highly likely it may resort to a scapegoat strategy. Let me conclude by this. As the Italian philosopher Machiavelli used to say, to trust is good, but to control is better. This is the best catchphrase for Xi Jinping and his leadership. Thank you.
Thanks for Professor蔡荣祥. We do have a little time remaining, so I'm going to ask our panelists. Maybe some of our panelists would like to have some responses or feedbacks to the view just presented. Maybe we just start from Professor Ami.
Two quick comments. I think the issue of power succession is extremely important. The fact that Xi Jinping is now in his third term represents his personal power. Yet when you think about, from a perspective of the communist regime as a whole, the fact that you can't have a stable power transition or power succession represents a really fragile aspect of the communist regime. That's my first comment. The second comment about military reform that has been taking place under the Xi Jinping regime. I think this really represents the seriousness of the widespread corruption within the military. Xi has continuously mentioned that the PLA has to prepare for war, and when he says that, the Japanese media really focuses on his comment and say, look, Xi Jinping is preparing for war, but you really have to understand the other aspect. The reason why the head of the Communist Party has to make those kind of comments is he realizes the fact that they're not capable of coping with the present military situation. On one hand, he's talking about taking back the lost territories. If you want to do that, you might have to confront the U.S. military, and then you have to enhance your capability of the PLA. But the PLA is, how do I say that, contaminated with corruption. So that became a major challenge for Xi Jinping. And the irony is that he replaced so many generals, but the problem is those who are introduced by Xi Jinping will now use that status, and then they will, become corrupt as well. I think the case of the downfall of Li Shanfu is a symbol of that case. So it's really difficult. You choose new people, and then they go corrupt. So corruption is a really tough problem to solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As for power succession of Xi Jinping, she has not decided who should be the next leader after himself. As far I think, while he has been trying to keep his power and authority, and at the same time he has watching who has the quality to the next leader. Some people say that Peng Liyuan, who is Xi's wife and the PLA general, she may be the candidate to be selected the next leader after Xi. I can anticipate that this story will be real excellent, but I am going to stress that it would be safe not to deny the
every possibility of power succession including by the hereditary tradition, because she is so-called new era, 新时代, means everything will happen. Thank you.
Professor Lee, would you like to make some concluding remarks? Thank you.
Not a concluding remark, but just a quick response to my colleague Dr. Tang's analysis. I mentioned that there are 4 cases that happened only very recently. The first one is the unexpected downgrading transfer of position of Mr. Chen Guoqiang, who was the Deputy Secretary of the PLA's Disciplinary Commission. And it's been downgraded to the political commissar of the National Technological University. So it's kind of unusual. That's case number 1. Case number 2 is the Mr. Cao Xingxin. That's also a deputy secretary of the Central Organization Department, who's now under investigation. The third one is the 3-star general of Qin Shutong, who is the PLA's Army's political commissar, and who's now under investigation. The news just came out in September. And then a few days ago, 5 days ago, another guy, also another 3-star general, Mr. Qin Zhengxiang, is also under investigation, who has been working in the office of the Central Military Commission. So these 4 people are closely related to Xi Jinping. It's kind of unusual. They are all either purged or now under investigation. So, which leads to one core question, that the role of General Zhang Youxia, the vice chairperson of the Central Military Commission. So that's one thing that we should pay much attention to, and it's worth some more investigation. Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. That's all I want to say.
Thanks. As we have reached the end of this panel, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the distinguished guests, including Deputy Minister Liang Wenjie from the Mainland Affairs Council on the stage, and to everyone here for your participation. This section has concluded successfully. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank all the panelists for the excellent discussion. Now it's lunch break. Please go to the counter to pick up a lunchbox with your badge. Lunchtime keynote speech will begin at 12:50. Thank you. 有事先报名的来宾可以到报到处用识别证领取便当，谢谢。